Hello, hey, welcome to another Knapsack webinar. Today, we're going to talk about the version 4 of our software. And if you're already familiar with version 3, welcome. I would like to show you some new stuff. If you have no idea what Knapsack is, this is kind of like jumping into the Marvel universe on Infinity War. So there's a lot of other stuff out there. If you want to catch up to it, we can talk about some features. But today we're going to talk about the brand new stuff. And with me today is Evan. Evan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey everybody, the co-founder and head of product and engineering here at Knapsack. We're really excited to be sharing this with you all. We're really excited to build this product. This is kind of the product that we wish that we had, back in the day. We've been working in design systems for a really long time, and Knapsack is a platform for all your design system needs. Chris, go ahead and
Yeah,
introduce
hi.
yourself.
My name is Chris. I'm a engineer here at Knapsack, and really excited to talk to you about kind of what we've been cooking up and all the new stuff that's coming out here pretty soon. So before we get going, I do want to plug a theming in complex ecosystems webinar we have coming up next month. We'll have Donnie from GoDaddy, who's going to be telling us about what they're working on over there and their opinions and their thoughts on doing complex theming, because that's what Knapsack is all about. It's about helping you manage all of your design system assets and documentation and components and building stuff and themes. So today we're going to get right into what we're going to talk about. This is kind of an overall agenda. We're going to be talking about our new block system. We've got a new whole way that we're doing tokens. We're going to show you the new stage. We're going to show you private pages. We're going to get a little bit into our AI features as well. Then we're going to leave some room at the end for some QA. So also feel free to ask any questions right in the middle of it. There should be a question and answer feature in Zoom. We'll see those questions, and I'm happy to just answer them as we get to it. We'll be doing video snippets for all of this, just so it's easy to jump forward and backward. We don't have to be at the whim of the internet to go see stuff. So all that said, let's take a look at the first new feature, and that is going to be our block sizes. So in Knapsack, you make content for the documentation around your design system. We have a very robust documentation system, but we want to show you our new block sizes system. So what we're going to do here is I have a block, a lot of lorem ipsum. I'm going to show this block being different sizes by just simply selecting it and choosing large, medium, or small. This is really fun because we can go put blocks beside each other in different proportions. A lot of people have asked for this. So I'm just going to add a second block, and you can see that here we are. We can set different sizes on this as well. A lot of folks wanted different tools to give them the layout and the white space that they needed in their content. It was a big one, very different from the way we're doing things in V3. Thought you'd appreciate that for V4. All right,
One way I
let's talk
could
about the,
see that that'd be really helpful would be, this works with all of our blocks. So including like embedding like a real live component, it's like in a web page, it's the fully coded component, and being able to embed that as a block and then being able to put content next to it. This can be everything from just some
yeah.
text, if you want to be able to have some words on it, to you could just put it right next to the Figma comp and basically be able to say like, hey, here is like design's view of things, and then here is how it is actually experienced by the users in code right next to each other, so you can be able to spot discrepancies. There's a lot of ways that this can be used. We're stoked that it applies to all the blocks.
Awesome. All right, next up to go with block resizing is what we call block spacing. This is actually asked very frequently for folks, and that is they just want to be able to nudge blocks around a little bit better. So what you're going to see is you're going to see two blocks pushing each other apart vertically, large, medium, or small spacing. A lot of white space questions. I'll play that again so you guys can kind of see it in action. All we do is we choose spacing, small, medium, large, and we can watch this space grow. Nice little things like this kind of makes the whole editing experience a whole lot better for our users. Awesome. Let's look at the next one. Next one is reorganization. I'm going to go ahead and hit play here, and you're going to see this in action, which is just a good old drag and drop. You've got these blocks, you need to place them somewhere else on your page. You just grab them by the little handle and move them over. very robust in between, combining this with sizes and combining this with spacing. You can get some really crazy layouts, and it makes it a whole lot easier to move stuff around the page.
Yeah, and one reason why we needed to put a little bit extra love into it is before the block sizes, our blocks were really just stacked on top of each other full width. And
Yep.
so being able to get that, ability to not just drag it up and down, but left and right and be able to plop it in between two spots, it just, needed to be able to kind of update some classic drag and drop things so it worked like you would expect it to.
Excellent. All right, next up is our rich text editor, the improvements that we've made to it. We're just going to show some content being placed in here and the highlighting and the formatting that you would expect for that text. And this gives us a much more inline pop-up contextual experience rather than like, the single static bar. Here we are with our header styles. And you can kind of see this in action. I think this is going to be a lot more robust for our users as they're putting in links and they're doing different kind of formatting for their text inside the block. All right, one more time, just for the sake of making sure we saw what we saw. There we are. Awesome. All right, that's the V4 pop-up formatter, which you can see in action here. It's great. All right, next up. So we have a table block that we want to show you. Instead of combining the feature of tables inside the feature of a rich text editor, we have these separate, so you can have a really specific way of talking about your content and laying them out. So this standalone block right here is going to give you the good old table as you expect. Here's a table of my cats and their disposition, and editing that you would expect inside of a table, adding columns, deleting columns, copying, pasting, editing headers, rearranging headers, the whole 9 yards. Making it its own block gives you a whole lot of power. I'll just play it again here so we can look at it. Gives you a lot of power, and lets you resize and lets you kind of fit it right where you want to talk about it. Now, remember, if you want to show things like your tokens, types or groups, we're going to get into that. We have better tools for that to really show off pieces of the design system. But often we just have tables of contents, tables of list of brand guidelines. Really, really handy there. Sweet. All right. Next one. We've got a new color picker. All right, it's a much better experience. This is going to let us, drag and drop, choose the colors we want. We can work within RGB, HSL, hex. I think we've all seen color pickers on the internet. Ours has just been updated, be a lot more modern, a lot more easy to use. You can actually see it inside of our revamped tokens admin experience in the background there. We're going to get to that in just a second, but that's a really key part of it. Awesome. Speaking of the tokens admin experience, this one's going to be a little bit longer, but I do want to talk about what we are about to see here. So we reworked the way our design tokens system works on the back end, but we also completely revamped it on the front end. I'm going to show you that in action. So design tokens are individual pieces of data about your design system that you can store and exchange and convert. And we're going to show that we've got a very robust way of handling different types of tokens. For instance, let's look at our box shadows that might be part of our design system. When I go and I select a box shadow, I'm going to be provided with the fields that are contextual to just box shadows, right? I can edit it, I can update it, I can save this, and now I can have the branded box shadow, just like I can go deep into all of my tokens, colors, groups, and see them in action here. So this is a lot of work. We got this really nice sidebar that flies out. We call this this is this kind of our palette, that lets us work with it. There is the color picker that we just saw from before. I can make a brand new token. As you can see right here, it is now part of the colors brand primary group. I can now take this green, it becomes data, it becomes styling, it becomes React code, it can become iOS, it can become Android. All of that is done through the UI here. We can see this in action a little bit more, editing it, navigating around, you can see that we've got all of our nested groups on the left-hand side, but we can also create new groups on the fly as children of other groups. I'm going to call this group subgroup. Okay, I'm just going to add it. I'm going to make sure that that group is of a certain type called color, and you're going to watch the subgroup group appear in the UI. There it is right up top there, brand subgroup. And I can just start adding tokens to it, all I want right now. This becomes real JSON. This becomes real data, real code that enters your repository that's part of a Knapsack workspace. And this is what you give to your team. This is what your team has to go make components with. Happy to answer any questions about what we just saw there. That was only a minute and a half kind of walking through that. But you can see this huge UI and how important design tokens are to the way Knapsack works. Evan, do you
So,
have anything to add on the admin experience there?
always. Could you get to the video to the spot where we're editing a shadow token, please?
Yeah, it's going to be like
So,
right
what we've been
there.
keeping our eye on the W3C draft spec for the design tokens, and
Yeah.
we are now storing all the design tokens in that format. We really believe in standards. It's how the internet is able to scale. It's having your tokens in that standard is kind of like having a bunch of imports and exports for free. We also have some imports and exports that are like baked in, kind of like the classic method, but we again believe in standards. So we're looking real close at that. And the when you edit your design tokens, the file that gets changed in the Git repo that's attached to Knapsack is that W3C draft spec for the tokens. So the one thing that's kind of interesting on how they basically handle the design tokens is like this big kind of emphasis on the type of tokens. So,
Yeah.
there's a type color, it's got to be obviously a color, type dimension, and it's be like 12 pixels or, 1.2 rems. And, from those low level types, and there's more types than I mentioned there. From those low level types, you can start to build up to more complicated ones. And they refer to those as composite tokens. So shadow is one of them here. So you can see in the right that there is basically it's like constituent parts. So shadow token is made up of a color and 4-dimension tokens. So there's the actual color, there's offset X, offset Y, spread, and blur. And all those can reference another token as well. And so we have a lot of the other the other composite tokens that are on the way. Most notably support for transition tokens, which is something that can demo much better in the web than
Yeah.
in graphic applications. So anyway, we're really excited about that. I think it sets down, it brings our design token experience a lot further, but it also sets the foundation for a lot of more fun things to be able to come. So we're really excited about that. And like Chris mentioned, this gets exported out as usable code files that can make it to production and therefore can be experienced by your end users. So SAS, CSS, and
Hmm.
TypeScript and JS and XML for Android and Swift for iOS and several other formats. And so making sure that these design decisions make it to the medium it's destined for to be experienced by the end users is a big part of what has us excited about this as well.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Yeah, this is it really kind of shows how important tokens are, given that Figma is now supporting this as kind of a first class thing inside of Figma. They're really banking on it. They call it variables. A lot of other tools out there are really kind of doubling down on definition of tokens and then how it streams into the rest of your product. Of course, we've got the experience right now with our new admin. Awesome. Let's talk about using those tokens somewhere else inside a knapsack. So we've gone and defined those. We have dozens of tokens in our system. Let's show them in the middle of a piece of documentation. So we've got our docs right here. We've written this landing page as brand guidelines, and we've said, let's place a token block right here. By default, it's a giant list that's filterable for people to search so they can get the names, they get the values very quickly. However, you can make this look and feel a lot of different ways. So for instance, we can choose our tokens to be just the color type, and we want to display them as swatches. You can see that we're going to filter by brand. We can see all of our tokens that have been, that are part of the brand group. And if we don't like that, we can go choose our palette instead. And now I've got the palette colors. And I got to put it right in between the paragraphs that I've written about our brand or our usage guidelines or, the various other things we need to tell our teams. These are important, and they're so important, they're actual data that we're going to use when we go code the things. So really important there, really shows like the robustness of our block system and how it ties into the other pieces of Knapsack. All right, here's a big one. In Figma, you can make tokens. There's a plugin called Token Studio for Figma that's extremely popular. It's kind of the standard of how you define these things, and you can go then use them as you're designing in Figma. But we can also take those values and get them imported directly into Knapsack as well. So what you're going to see here when we hit play is the plugin in Figma. We're going to make a new token. We're then going to export it, and we're going to import it to Knapsack. So we're going to choose a new color. We're going to make it red. I'm going to call it quaternary. Okay, there's our demo colors. I'm going to choose to export this as JSON very quickly. We just simply copy it. We hop right on over to Knapsack. We choose to import it, and then we paste it right on in. And we're going to see it pop up in our UI in real time because this actual data. This is now part of our work inside of Knapsack. We commit this, it joins our repo, becomes our JSON. We can use it inside of React and Angular and Twig and whatever we decide to build our components in. So everything you see right here in this demo group came directly out of Figma. So we have that connection. It's really, really important. Awesome. So I see a question here that says, are you using the tokens plugin versus the native Figma variables simply for the import-export functionality? To answer this really quickly, the Token Studio for Figma is very robust, and it's been around for a lot longer than native Figma variables, which they just announced a couple of weeks ago. And we like the Token Studio plugin because it allows you to create native Figma variables very well, but also gives a very easy way of getting the data out of the system. Today, there really isn't kind of a Figma standard way to get that JSON out of Figma. We really like Studio, again, because it makes variables and it also makes getting the data out. And they've got a really good way of managing, groups of tokens and how they become things like themes. Yeah.
Yeah. So the only way to be able to get to the Figma variables, like all those values, it's one of two ways. It's either you're on the Figma enterprise plan and you're using like a REST API. So most, like the vast majority of Figma of users are not on that Figma enterprise plan. It's prohibitively expensive. Not saying that that's a reason not to, but it's a barrier. And so other than that, you have to be able to have a plugin. So making a plugin is actually relatively easy. You can see if you search for Figma variables in like the Figma plugins store, then you're going to see a lot of different options. So they all put out the data a little bit differently. Part of this is because it's like super new too. So there's a bit of basically like not wanting to settle on a format that's just a fly-by-night third-party plugin. And I'm not referring to Token Studio, just to be super clear. I'm talking about basically like the different plugins that are out there for exporting Figma variables in like different formats. Also Figma variables only supports like a couple types. So they don't even have dimension. They have number, but they don't have, 12 pixel, for example. So I think it's still pretty new. Figma calls it a beta themselves. So there's a little bit of letting some of that stuff settle down and keeping a very close eye on it as well.
We had a great
Please
question. We had a great
please throw out any
question
more
that said,
questions.
yeah, it says, hey, you imported one new token. by copy pasting, can you import in bulk? In fact, we did import in bulk. That whole group that you saw there with all the other colors inside a studio, that is basically 4 new colors that did not exist in Knapsack yet. So by grabbing that whole pile of JSON there, you're actually going to see that JSON includes those 4 colors. And yes, we pulled them right over. Now, we have 2 ways of importing. We can choose to merge, right, where we just smash the 2 objects together, or we can choose to replace, where it deletes all of your tokens and starts from scratch with what you bring in from Studio, just to kind of serve your needs. So those 4 colors right there you saw at the end, those are net new. And we've got demos of, groups of groups of groups of groups of groups coming in all over in one big pile. So great question. Awesome. Let's look at the next thing. This is quick and easy, and it's basically Knapsack has always allowed us to get the assets out of Knapsack when you're running it locally. So Knapsack is actually a development tool your developers run local to generate things. But we had folks who were like, hey, why can't I just click a button and get all of my token assets through the UI? Well, guess what? Now you can. There's this little exports button that pops up right here if you hit the triple dots. You won't be able to see it here because of the way the recording works, but you'll actually, what pops up in the Chrome, downloads list is a zip file. You're given a zip file that includes the JSON of the tokens themselves, the CSS, the Sass, less iOS and Android XML inside of a single zip for everything you see here. So if you're editing and adding and making new groups and whatnot through the UI, you can press a button, get a new zip that includes all of those new assets for you in real time. Very, very powerful. Oh, here, I'll do it
And
one more time. It's just there you go. Go for it.
also, it's part of the Knapsack CLI when it runs a build process to make all of those files. So if you want to integrate this into your CI pipelines, where
Yeah,
every time you're doing a continuous integration build, it's building tokens, which then can basically help build out your components or your styles. So that way, when you see the components in Knapsack, they're using those new token values, and it can head on to production. That works as well. They're the exact same set of files, whether you use the UI to download or you use the command line to do a build with all the tokens.
that's awesome. We have customers who use the output from this in CI to feed the data to something like Tailwind, which is a really popular CSS framework. And then Tailwind then makes the CSS for them. So as long as you have access to the root assets, you can do almost anything with it at that point. Got another question here that says, can these tokens sync with the same Git repo that is being used by Token Studio? So make a change here and that reflects in Token Studio and vice versa. Currently what we have right now, we're not talking to Token Studio through the API, like through a JSON API. I do know they have a very cool synchronization system in Token Studio. I love it. You're going to notice that the things they can sync to, one of them, like you mentioned, is a GitHub repository. Our goals for the future is for one of them to be a Knapsack instance out there. That's future, that's goals, that's down the road. But currently we don't do a real-time syncing across the internet or anything like that. It is exports and imports through these buttons and these interfaces. Awesome. Any other questions about kind of what we're seeing with exporting and design tokens? Sweet. All right, let's look at the next thing. Knapsack is also very much about the components that you've coded. And we're talking components like React and Angular and Twig and the raw HTML, if that's the way you guys build. And we provide an interface to demo your components, right? Because a component is design, but it's also the data that you give it, so that a button can say, click me, or a button can say, sign up here. And we have this thing called a stage where you get to see your components live and you get to change the incoming data, also known as props, and watch it change in real time and re-render. For version 4, we've completely redesigned the experience for that. And you kind of see this in action here. I'm messing with the button by changing the fields on the right-hand side. I change the label to Hello World. We watch it update. You're going to watch us change the type and the size. Here, this thing's going to get bigger. Of course, we can't see the select drop downs because of the way the operating system records. But here, I'm going to change the icon here so we can see how different icons look inside of our component in real time. So the right-hand side rail for all of this is new for our new stage. It used to be on the left, used to be a lot more used to be a little bit more rudimentary, and on the right hand side it's a lot more robust. We also have the ability to resize the stage. This is a request we got pretty often. When you resize the way a component shows up on this page, it's saved. So when you come back to it, your stage will be a certain size. So that way you can go show, this is my button, and you can make your stage wider or taller to kind of see how it would work in more or less space. Some people want it really, really tight, so there's no extra room, so we don't, it doesn't end up in the upper left-hand corner or something like that. Just kind of show that in action. So this is coming out. Go ahead, Evan.
So what I was going to say about that is that like being able to constrain, the size of the page that it's displayed on, can really help out. So you can imagine a card that, above a certain size, it instead of having its image on top, it has its image on the side. And so you could be able to make multiple demos, each with different sizes, to kind of showcase that ideal width of the component. And having it be manually set really just gives a lot of power to the user there, because it's almost impossible to be able to figure out how wide a card should be. If a card could be as wide as a hero if you let it, but we all kind of know that's not like its intended use. And so being able to set the width in the demo is about communicating intention and like
Intention.
desired usage.
Yeah.
Also, it really makes the thumbnails elsewhere appear a lot better as well if we know the exact size. So everything
Yeah.
looks a lot better with that.
Awesome. We've got demos and we've got walkthroughs of this stage experience and the demos concept inside of Knapsack. It really, really, it's incredibly powerful, right? Because we want our teams to make one button, and we want that one button to handle all of the use cases of if it's large, if it's small, if it's disabled, if it has an icon, if it doesn't. We have a way of saving all of those different states without having to duplicate any code. Really, really powerful. Probably one of the biggest reasons folks use Knapsack out there. All right. Here's a request that we got into V4, and that is making pages private. We have roles for the different members of our teams in Knapsack. You can set, an admin, an editor, or a viewer role, and then you can create access rules for what a user is allowed to see. So on the left-hand side, you're going to see an admin who's going to change this page's role to be above a viewer. Only contributors and above can see it. And on the right-hand side, you've got just a viewer, and you're going to watch that viewer get locked out of the page in real time. So here we are. In my case, I'm a super admin, but I'm an admin on that page. On the right-hand side, I'm just a regular viewer. And I'm going to go and change the privacy of this page to contributor and above in just a second, just proving I can still see this as a viewer on the right-hand side. Now we're going to change it to contributor, and you're going to watch me get kicked out as a viewer on the right-hand side. Boop, bye-bye, it's a private page now. I go back, I refresh, can I see this? Nope, I'm actually locked out. As an admin, I'm going to set it back to viewer, and on the right-hand side, you'll see that I'll be allowed to see it in real time. So there it is. That's our ability to change page access on role. We use roles also in lots of other places around what a user is allowed to edit. That demo that we just saw on the prior stage page, are you allowed to create demos? Are you allowed to create tokens? Are you allowed to edit, delete tokens, right? So you can give your users different elevations on what you want them to do inside of your brand and your design system. Sweet. Awesome. Next up, how are we doing on time? Right at 30. Last but not least, we have a new helper inside the Knapsack UI, and this is our AI chatbot. It's been trained up on our docs and our documentation, and as our docs get better, it gets better as well. But you can ask it questions in real language, and it will provide actual helpful results. So, for instance, on this page, I've clicked the little lower right-hand corner question mark, and I ask Atlas, "Hey, what's a design token?" And tells me what a design token is. And then specifically, I can ask it as it relates to, a knapsack, can I use dashes in my design token name? By the way, this was a source of confusion in version 3. Am I allowed to have dashes in my name? And in version 4, yes, you can indeed. And the chatbot is aware of the v4 docs and lets you know that you can do that. Um, Often we want to know, what are we allowed to store inside of a design token? What's the shape of it? What's the JSON that's allowed? It'll tell us, and it'll give us links on inside of the Knapsack documentation specifically for things around design tokens and anything that you would want to ask it relating to Knapsack. Now, Evan, you probably have a lot to say about this. I'll let you jump in here.
This is part of, some setting some foundation for some exciting features and also delivering something that's like very valuable right off the bat. Being able to, have, AI summarize a large body of work, is something that specializes in. So being able to get like the help from our docs is, a great first start there. It's something that, you know, applies universally to whichever, knapsack workspace you're on. And, but what gets us really excited is where we can go after these foundations, not only with AI, but also some of the other things in version 4. One reason why we had to go from V3 to
Mm-hmm.
V4 is because we changed around our data model. And so, that data model is a bunch of stuff under the hood that have changed, that not all of it is, palpable user value, things that can be touched and used in the UI, but it does set that stuff up. It's one reason why we're really excited about how this lays the foundation. Now, with AI bot in here, we wanted to be able to help out with some docs and be able to get our UI for it, get our basic server pipeline for all of it set up. And so a lot of it is kind of set up for a lot of the things to come. The creation of content is where we want to be able to really focus on having some of the AI functionality help kind of going forward. Being able to add some design tokens that fit a certain like color rhythm, or be able to kind of suggest any design tokens that are missing.
Yeah.
You might have a darker and a darkest for a lot of them, but you might be missing it on some of them. I could suggest those kind of things. Again, what I'm talking about right now is basically like some of the things that we're working on. The AI bot we have here right now should be able to help out with, finding a lot more information. So we hope that this is useful for you right now, but we're really excited for what it can and will become soon.
Awesome. There was a quick question, Evan, of is the chatbot from scratch, or did we use a third-party app for the engine? I know that we host all this ourselves on our own servers. I can get specifically, so Tony, I can get you specifically what, the API is for it that we're using, if that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we're using OpenAI,
Hmm.
and we're also using LangChain,
Yep.
but those are all just building blocks, and
Yep.
the UI is all ours. And yeah, just kind of like a lot of the internet's built on is a lot of libraries put together, but definitely not like a turnkey chat like AI chatbot lib at all.
Right. Correct.
I think yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that
Um,
didn't serve our needs well enough.
It never
Awesome.
does in the end. It gets you going quickly, but in the end, when you want to be able to cater it towards what you're doing, especially something so specific as like design systems,
Yeah.
you tend to end up needing to customize them eventually.
Sweet. Well, here's the stuff we didn't really get a chance to get to today. These might be more webinars in the future. We have a lot to talk about on these, but we'll just kind of quick overview. There is an automated system to get you from V3 to V4. Since there is a change of data fundamentally inside of the way we store this stuff, we have a script that gets you from V3 to V4 very quickly. It takes a couple minutes to run. Of course, we mentioned this earlier. We revamped the way all tokens are stored and processed. Years ago, when we had to do this the first time, we had the knapsack token format, And now we've established ourselves to use the standard, the W3C proposed spec to do this. That means you can take these, tokens and you can go to any other system that understands that spec and use them. There is a whole new experience for making the UI in Knapsack look and feel like your brand. You can change the colors, you can change the fonts, so you can really, you're not just stuck with our purple and our white. Also, inside of Knapsack, we use a huge amount of YAML and JSON, and we super streamline the way that we do a ton of that. That doesn't really affect our front end experience other than knowing that it's a lot faster. You get a much more robust, just kind of snappier feel to everything. We also put out a bunch of our design tokens processing utilities. We open sourced them. They're out at this repository right here. We'll have a list of links at the end that you guys can check out. So that's the code that we're using internally to go process a bunch of what we're doing around our design tokens. Finally, we revamped the way we do styles, and we've also done a massive upgrade around security and just new feature or new updates for all of the dependencies that we have inside of Knapsack, the back end and the front end. So that's a lot that's gone into V4. There's also a lot to be said, and Evan just touched on this. There's a lot to be said for the generative AI capabilities, right? Which is around, I have a set of rules for my design system. I would like a new token. Um, there's a lot to be said around that. Please check out this presentation where our CEO, Chris, and Evan, our CTO, get into it pretty deeply. And they talk a lot about what's possible and what we can do today with that. So that really pretty much wraps it up. If we've got any QA that we want to talk about, if there's any questions, I see there's a new question that just came in. Um, uh, Josh actually has, hey, to answer your question about how what we did for our AI chatbot, Tony, please check out this link. I want to make sure that everybody can see this link. Lindsay, can you grab that link and make sure it's please included with the rest of the stuff here? Actually, I think I'll grab it and go put it right over on the in the chat. How to chat with your knowledge base. There, oh, already got it. There it is. Thanks, Lindsay. Awesome. Any other questions that we have about what you've seen, what's coming up in V4, what's down the road for the future, what we can do today with V4, anything around tokens, anything around our components, CI, ask us anything. We're here to help. Awesome. Give it a couple more minutes and then we can bounce. All right, folks, thank you so much. Thanks for coming
Wait, I
today.
think I see. Hold up.
Is there a typer?
Well, there's a raised hand from Harry
Oh,
Shaw.
oh.
Uh, Lindsay, I'm not sure how to be able to let Harry chat here, but I think that since you're the host, you might have that permission.
Awesome.
Hey, there we go.
Hey, hi, am I audible?
Yeah, we can hear you. Hi, Harry.
Hi. So yeah, thanks for offering the opportunity. This was a great session. So since the last I think at least 6 to 8 years, I've been basically my career is as a engineer slash senior engineer. I'm dedicated to like building design systems for multiple companies. And so I like your product. It's definitely end to end, everything required for all the layers of design systems from the tokens to CSS and everything it does, and it's done really well. I have a question. So for the component library to be in your dockside portal, I don't know whether you call that Knapsack portal or let's just call it the dockside portal. For that to be integrated into your dockside portal, what specification should it be in? Let's say, let me just give you two examples. One is a React library. And another one is say a web component one, but let's say it's uses stencil. So is there a certain specification that it should be written in, and should be exporting certain variables and methods, or it just has to be? Yeah, you can answer that question.
Yeah. So, okay. So the way that Knapsack stores all its content is just a bunch of JSON and YAML files in your repo. And so, when it is basically deployed and running, it is access to, your repo. And so the way that you register like patterns and components, so for React, you basically, if you think about how you would import it from an NPM package, it might have basically like, the package name might be at my org / my design system. So like the import name. And then it might export out button. And so we just need to know those two things for React. We're like, all right, where is what's the package name to import? And then what's the name to export? And then from there, it gets pulled in. If you're using TypeScript or prop types, we know all of the information there. If not, you can still enter them in manually, but it's kind of best to have it inferred. So that's on the React side. On the web component side, we just need to know basically, what is its like custom element tag, like my dash button, basically. And then of course, just like what's the, what are the assets to load up, like the JavaScript and CSS. Given those two things, we can just go ahead and display it rendered in a web browser.
Oh, okay. So when you're so let's just say both. Let's just say let's take it step one. I have the package exported, and I'm assuming the package should not be built for production. It should be built for dev, right? Because you would need the source maps, right?
You would not need the source maps. So it could be built for production.
Okay, let's say it's built for production, step one. Then, I basically place that package in a location where your knapsack would expect to, and I'll enter the package name. And then it's going to basically show me some UI to basically say that, put all the tags for the components. We detected 20 components and give me the tags for that.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, you put in the package name and you're able to, have a lot of things that are known about it displayed. So, I mean, again, it mainly like the prop types, and so, I mean, if you've got a button that takes like a size of small, medium, large, then you're going to be able to get that as like a little drop down in the edit form.
Yep. So we read prop types, but you can also define the props for a component. So you can choose the UI for what fields you want to provide to your component. So you have a lot of control in the UI of saying like, hey, I have a button, right? I have a label that needs to go into that button. When you pull that button in, you choose its name, include its package. We can read the prop types and find out there's a label, or you can define fields manually and say, I'm going to send in a prop type of this exact name, and it will allow you to see that update in the button real time.
Got it. Okay. This is amazing. I don't think anybody has done this. So yeah, thank you.
So this is, and I'll just throw up a quick little, example of this, right? This is when we run local, we have a lot of power to control all of this stuff, and we'll set a lot of this, and it changes JSON. When we deploy this stuff out to live, right, obviously we can't write files in prod, but you do get this awesome experience when you go and determine, so, here's label right here, right? So Evan, is there anything that you want to show here around?
Well, one thing I just want to add on to what you said there is you don't have to run it local to change the JSON in
Correct.
in the Git
Yes.
repo.
That's right.
Designers or
Yes.
product people can be able to get in here and make changes, and then what they end up doing is making a pull request. So I just want to clarify on that part.
Yep.
Harry, anything else? I see Tony's got a question that we want to talk about. Just any concluding questions?
Thanks
for coming.
Awesome. Thank
you.
Good
question.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So Tony, you have a question here about where tokens are used and vice versa, basically a two-way connection between tokens and their actual implementation. We currently don't track that. We currently don't have, some kind of way of saying like, this button or this card is using this set of tokens yet. Are you doing all of that manually? I see your question right here that says, hey, we have a big Airtable that says these components in our system are using these 19 tokens. And I'm going to guess, are those manual today? Okay, so
Yeah.
Tony says, yes, they're all manual today. Um, are you looking for a
So,
way to get that automated?
well, just, I mean, that right off the bat, I just want to say that like we support embedding Airtable as a block.
There you
So
go.
just right off the bat,
Yeah,
just saying that part. I know that that's still a manual part, but being able to like have the Airtable embedded anywhere in Knapsack is totally possible.
yeah.
Now, the automated part, which I'm sure would save a lot of time and make sure that it remains accurate. Um, that's one of the reasons as well why like all of our content is in like JSON and YAML, because you could make it part of your kind of custom build process where it looked for design token usage and then basically wrote some
Mm-hmm.
data, and so that could basically update like one of our blocks in here. A little bit of custom work for sure.
Yeah,
It would
yeah.
be nice to be able to have kind of a formal uh, process inside Knapsack that did that. The thing that makes it tricky, not impossible, but tricky, is that everybody uses design tokens a little bit differently. But that seems like that would be very valuable. Thanks for calling out that it would be interesting to be able to have something we'll start thinking about.
Awesome. Well, thanks, folks. When will percentage value be fully supported for scale sizing? Jackie, are you asking for having tokens change based on like
I think
math?
she's talking up. My guess is that it's dimension, because the
Mm,
W3C spec for dimension says that it needs to be a pixel or a rem value only.
or a rem? Yeah,
And so when we implemented everything, we followed the spec. But the reality of things is that a lot of people will still use percentage and
yeah.
and M's, um, and like viewport widths, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that they're trying to. The reason why this design token spec didn't do that is because they are, those values don't really exist in iOS and Android.
Android, yeah,
Um, yep, but we're pragmatic enough to realize that there's a lot of people who are web only, and it's up to the users to put that in. And so if a design system was going towards iOS, Android, and web, they would kind of just have to know to not use percentages in the dimensions. But for everybody else who's just in the web, being able
mm-hmm.
to like make that not a limit would be helpful. So that's the long of it. I think the short of it is really soon. That's something that we've already been
Yeah.
talking about, and we'd love to be able to put out.
Yeah, we have a lot of updates showing up in our tokens engine in the future around like basically robustness of tokens, right? What the spec says plus is very much what we're on next. All right. Any other questions? Thank you, folks, for an awesome webinar. Thanks for coming out, letting us show you all this cool stuff. Uh, Make sure you check out that webinar from the very beginning. We got it coming up in August 30th. And check out all those links that Lindsay has posted right there in the chat. Have a great day, everybody. And yeah, thank you.